All right, it looks like we are live. It is Tuesday, January 15th, 2019. Happy Tuesday if you're watching this live. Happy whichever other day of the week it is if you're watching a replay on this. I'm just going to quickly share this to my other pages, and if you'd like to invite some friends, family, etc. to join in, please feel free to do so. While we're doing that, go ahead and say hello, and why don't you post your favorite emoji? Say hello and post your favorite emoji. What's your emoji of the day? And then I'm just going to quickly share this. And then also, if you were on the live yesterday, if you have any questions about it, anything that you want me to dive in a little deeper, if you watch the replay, go ahead and post those, and then we'll start off with answering. Those first. And then I just have two more quick shares here, and then we'll be ready to rock and roll. Thank you for being patient. Oops, shit, I forgot to put the thing. Well, whatever. Sugar root. Gotta remember to copy and paste this stuff here. Okay, cool. All shared up. Let's see who's on here. Linda's on here. What's up, Linda? Kathy, hey, Kathy, good to see you on here. Leslie, hey, Leslie, poop emoji. I love the poop emoji. Shar, hey, Shar, good to see you on here. Kathy, better be a champagne bottle one. All right, let me get my stuff lined up here so we can do this. Any questions at all, first of all, before we jump in about yesterday? Was yesterday's helpful? Any insights, ahas that you want to share? Any takeaways? Hey, Lisa, good to see you on here. Everything was clear? Jamie, what's up, Jamie? Good to see you on here. Updates. Everything looks good for the rest of the week. 4-4 on Wednesday and Thursday. If you haven't, I got one of the strategy sessions that I offered yesterday got taken. If you want to grab one of the remaining two for this week, you can use this link right here to grab one of those. And something about coaching, somebody was asking me about that the other day, and so I should have distinguished this all along. I'll tell you this, and this comes from just working with lots of people now from all over the world. So my intention with these is to give you some tools, give you some strategies, really help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And who's coaching going to be appropriate for? It's really for those of you who are wanting to dive deeper in this, who are getting concepts, but you're not quite getting it to connect. Coaching is really where we go deep. We get into your own individual psychology, understand why you do what you do, and we start to clean out the proverbial baggage and then start to develop success systems and success practices and habits so to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So if you find yourself coming here a lot and you want to go deeper and you want to get more sooner than later, coaching would be a good fit for you. So use the link to get one of those spots and we'll get going. But otherwise, I don't see any questions popping up. What's up, Deborah? Leslie, I love that one. Good one. Let's dive into today about why guilt and our biggest fears are a marriage we need to end ASAP. Why guilt and our biggest fears are a marriage we need to end ASAP. So if you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Jesse Brisendine. And this week we're focusing our Facebook Lives on guilt. We went into defining guilt yesterday in quite a bit of detail. And I want to look at guilt and how it relates to our two biggest fears. So the two biggest fears that is shared with all human beings across all of humanity is a fear of I'm not lovable and the fear of I'm not enough. The fear of I'm not being lovable and the fear of I'm not enough. So these are cross-culture, doesn't matter what race, religion, color, gender, background, all those types of things that are core of who we are, the core of humanity. We all share those two fears. Fear of not being enough and a fear of not being lovable. I think this is beautiful and it's tragic in the same. I think it's beautiful because it's a reminder of how connected we all are and how similar we all are, as much as people might try to make us seem like we're not. And it's quite tragic that at the core of everything, right? And the commercialism and the capitalism and all the stuff that's out there, the 90-inch TVs, the new cars, the designer jeans and everything. What we all really want at our core is we all really want to be loved, and we all want to know that we're enough, that we matter. And it doesn't matter what we have or how much stuff we have or money we have or any of those types of things. We still fear the two same things, and we still all desire to have those mended. So I think it's both beautiful and tragic at the same time. Oh, you know what I forgot to mention? If you're watching this, be sure to interact throughout, because the more you're interacting, you're putting your comments, you're putting emojis and stuff. It just goes more information out to YouTube, out to Facebook to say, hey, there's something of value, and then they distribute it outwards. Yesterday it was awesome. We had something like 150 comments, so we got to see if we can beat that. And I also noticed because of that, we had a higher viewer count than we normally would. So I really think that does help. If you have questions, I encourage you to take notes. But if you have questions, you can post them as we go along, and then I'll circle back to them, or you can ask them at the end, and then we'll have a few moments at the end for Q&A. So that's our two biggest fears, right? These two big fears that drive so much, that influence so much of our behavior is am I enough? And the fear of not being loved. The fear of not being enough, the fear of not being loved, right? So we all want that. We all want to feel that. Now, if we go back to our definition that we were playing with guilt yesterday, that we feel guilty because we believe or we perceive that there is a better alternative. There was something else we could have done instead. Well, if we look at that, what happens with guilt and these two biggest fears is guilt will often reinforce them. Because when we feel guilty, we usually feel guilty because we believe that we made a choice in lieu of a better alternative. So, and that alternative would have made us feel more loved, and that alternative would have made us feel more of enough. See, if we do something, if we make a choice that doesn't hurt anyone else, or we make a choice that doesn't let anyone else down, we don't feel guilty, do we? If we make a choice if we make a choice to eat potato chips on the weekend, even though we're not supposed to, and it doesn't affect anyone else, we don't feel guilty. We might feel some shame about that, but we definitely don't feel guilt, right? Because it's not affecting anybody else. But if instead we were to eat the potato chips, and we made an agreement with our best friend that we were going to give up potato chips for January, and then we eat them and we know that they're not, we may feel guilty about that because we know that we're breaking the agreement we have with our friend, that we're letting him down. And then if we go down to the fear level, and this is where this guilt really becomes prevalent, and this is going to be kind of the core of what I want to focus on today. If we go down to the fear level, then we can start to form a belief around that because I made a choice that wasn't in my best interest, wasn't in my friend's best interest, that I'm no longer deserving of their love, that I'm no longer enough to be their friend because I let them down, I let myself down. And then because of that, we start to feel guilty, right? We start to experience the emotion of guilt, because guilt, really, in many ways, the expression of guilt comes as almost a compensatory, if I could speak, a compensatory act of love, right? We feel like we did something where we didn't demonstrate or show love. If I were to ask you all, and you can all just, if you agree with this, just put a little heart emoji, or you can just type in love. If I were to ask you all, which I'm going to anyways, and say, what's most important to you in life? And if you have the option to feel love or not feel loved, would you choose to feel love, or would you choose to not feel loved? I'm guessing most everybody would try to say love. I see quite a few hearts trickling up. So it's the absence of love that we fear, right? It's if we're not enough, and the two fears, you see how closely they're connected, right? Oftentimes, if we feel we're not enough, we're going to feel that it's because we're not loved. And if we feel loved, we may feel enough. If we feel that we're enough, we may feel loved. It's a slippery slope on how these two, but you can see they kind of run a parallel, and even they crisscross at times. So much of when we start to feel guilt, we feel this as a compensatory action of love. We're trying to compensate because we believe in that moment that the decision we made, the action we took without the intention of love, without an action of love. I love my friend. I love my friend enough to commit to supporting them on this no potato chip January. But then when I decided to eat the potato chips, I wasn't thinking of my friend. I wasn't thinking about loving her or him. What I was thinking about was I was thinking about my own impulse to eat potato chips, and that they wouldn't know, but I know, right? And here they are giving up their potato chips, something they love, and I'm just sitting over here munch, crunching away. So now that I've done that, do I even deserve to be their friend anymore? I mean, I basically lied to them. I broke my agreement with them. Am I really enough to be their friend? And for most of us, this isn't going to pop up right from the get-go, right? It's going to be something that we start to learn these over time. See, we go back to childhood for many of us, which is where our guilt will stem from. I know for me, it's definitely there. And we can probably put our fingers on time and time again where we believed we weren't enough or we weren't loved based off the reactions from our parents. Now, here's where this gets really tricky and where guilt starts to proliferate so much in childhood. The stereotype is that you see a baby cry, right? Because we don't have language, we don't have the ability to communicate. So what we have is the vocalizations that we can make. The baby's trying to articulate that it needs its needs met, right? It needs to get its needs met. And I'm not going to get into human needs psychology right now. That's a much bigger conversation than we have for now. And we dive into it in greater depth and unlock your greatness. And we can also with coaching too. But basically a baby's expression, when it's sitting there going, wah, 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 it's doing it because it's trying to get its needs met in the only way it knows how to. Now, most healthy adults are going to respond, and they're going to run over there and they're going to do what they need to do to try to meet the baby's needs. They'll be visually expressive. They'll communicate love. They'll offer food, right? All these types of things. But then what happens? The baby starts to grow up, and suddenly the wham, 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 wham isn't quite as cute anymore. Baby starts to get a little older. It starts to have a little bit more independence. So now expectations change. They shouldn't have to come over and just deliver the food. The baby should be able to go get its food, or should be able to do certain things for itself. Really quickly, a child who was taught from the first breath that we're going to have these other beings there to essentially meet our needs at our beck and call. Wham, wham, wham. Here they come to meet our needs. And now all of a sudden they're going to start withholding that. Unconsciously, we can learn very quickly that, well, wait, did I do something that I wasn't enough? Am I not lovable anymore? Because we were always getting this love feedback, right? This is why we touched on this yesterday. We can start to learn guilt at such a young age. As early as 3 years old, we have children reporting strong emotional experiences of guilt. Well, when we have these primary sources of needs being met starting to get withdrawn, and we don't know any different because we're just trying to make sense of things, then what happens is perceptually, not knowing any difference, we can perceive that as being, well, we're not enough, we're not lovable. Does this make sense? From early on. Now, so let me give you another way of looking at this. First of all, does this make sense? You guys with me on this? Yes, no? Just, you can give me some feedback real quick. I want to make sure that we're all clear on this before we go down the rabbit hole a little bit more. If I were to tell you all, so I want you to look around the room that you're in right now. Cool. Yes. Thanks, Christine. Hey, Christine, good to see you on here. Look around the room you're in right now. And I want you to look around the room you're in right now. And as you're looking around the room, I want you to notice everything in the room that is red. So just look around the room and just notice everything that's red. Notice if there's red tiles, there's a red book, there's maybe red on the TV, there's if you're looking at my profile picture on here, you can see some red in the profile picture. Maybe if you're looking at the live screen, the live thing is kind of a reddish color. And maybe you're seeing some hearts go up. So there's red. So just notice all the red that you see. And then I want you to close your eyes. I want you to close your eyes. And with your eyes shut right now, I want you to try to remember everything that you just saw that was the color green. It's going to be kind of tough, isn't it? Thinking, wait, why am I having to look at green? You just told me red. I was focusing on red. I was memorizing the red. Now you want to look at green. See, what we focus on is what we experience. If we learn from an early age that we go wham, 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 we're going to get our needs met, we're told to look at red. But then all of a sudden somebody tells us, hey, now you got to start noticing the green. Tell me about all the green. Well, we never learned that. We were never taught that. And so we can start to interpret these things from that framework, right? We can start to perceptually believe that, well, wait, if I'm not doing this, then I'm not enough. Me, as an example, we'll go back to me sharing some of my story, right? So I start to learn early on that my mom's not happy all the time, I get some backstory information with it. And so I start to behave and act in a way to always try to make my mom happy, right? Because when my mom's happy, then I've learned to believe that if she's happy, then I'm enough. I've learned to believe that if she's happy, I'm loved. I don't know when I'm 5 years old or whatever it is that I can't control my mom's emotional state. But because I love my mom, and much of our guilt, I mean, if I were to ask everybody on here, I'd be willing to bet that 99.9% of you, your guilt is largely motivated by love, isn't it? And so I love my mom. I want to make my mom happy. I don't know that I can't make her happy. And so I keep trying to do these things. Well, what happens is it escalates, right? And as I get older, as I get more independent, I start to see my mom more for herself, her struggles, her challenges. I'm not just seeing her through the eyes of a toddler. I'm seeing her from more of an eyes of a human being. I see her for all these different things. And so I keep wanting to try to make her happy. But because I'm not making her happy anymore to the degree I was as a baby that I was aware of, right? When I'd go away, and she'd come over and she'd smile. I start to learn and believe that I'm not enough. I'm not loved. And so I can start to feel guilty from that because I associate my actions or inactions. I associate me choosing whatever I did as being the wrong choice, because remember, guilt exists because we think there's something better we could have done. And in turn, I start to feel guilty. I start to feel guilty because more than anything, what I want to see is I want to see my mom happy. And me being me and me doing what I was doing wasn't cutting it. And so then my guilt grows. It grows more and more. And then maybe there's little spurts of happiness there. Maybe there's an occasional smile from stuff like that. But it's never at the level that not my mom wants, but what I want. And because it's never at the level I want, it's never at my expectation. See, in my mind at that time, when I was learning to be guilty, I was forming this expectation about my mom and the world that if I did this, my mom should be happy. And because that expectation wasn't being met, I learned to realize a fear that was called, I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. Because I was quantifying my ability to make my mom happy as my sense of worthiness. Does this make sense? So guilt, for many of us, there's a real positive intent behind it, right? Oftentimes it's there as a supplemental, it's there to supplement love when we perceive that there's no love. The challenge with it is when we start to associate guilt and love hand in hand, and we are living in the fear that I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, we begin to use guilt as a vehicle, as a way, as a means to quantify love. The more guilty I feel means the more I love. If I don't feel guilty means I don't care. Right? Have any of you, and you can just say, why don't you type in guilty? This will be kind of funny or fun or funny. You know, we can make jokes about it because we're talking about it. Have any of you ever felt guilty for not feeling guilty? And if you have, just type in guilty. Have any of you ever felt guilty for not feeling guilty? And type in guilty if you're guilty of that. Have any of you ever felt guilty for not feeling guilty? And type in guilty if you're guilty of that. Maybe I should type it in right now too, because I'm hugely guilty of this. Oops, if I could type. When that happened, guilty, 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 guilty. There's a lot of guilties popping up right now. And even one gilly. So why is that, right? Because in those moments we feel guilty for not feeling guilty. It's not that we want to feel guilt. It's that there's some deeper part of us that probably believes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and if this is totally off base, or if you feel that this speaks to your heart, just say, you nailed it. There's some part of us, the reason that we feel guilty for not feeling guilty is because at our core, our unconscious level, we feared that maybe we weren't demonstrating enough love towards the person that we feel their guilt around. And so then we start feeling guilty for not feeling guilty. because we've learned to associate guilt as a way to quantify our love. The more guilt I feel means the more I love, right? The more I feel guilty about something that happened or didn't happen, it means the more I love and care about this person or this thing. And then we feel guilty for the absence of guilt because we start to associate and believe it to be the absence of love. Make sense? Guilty, guilty, guilty. Well, there's a lot of guilties on there. So you remember what I said, and I say all the time about why it's important for us to ask questions, why it's important for us to have conversations about this? Because look at how similar we all are. Here we all are, and there's probably, I don't know how many different states, how many different countries there are on here right now talking about, hey, don't make me feel guilty for misspelling guilty. That was good. How many different states, how many different countries are all now, right? How many different life experiences we've all had. And yet here we all are, and with one simple story, one simple example, a couple sentences, and it speaks to all of us. It's because human beings were not so different. We're very similar. We're not so foreign or mysterious. One of the things that drives me absolute bonkers, and it pisses me off to no end, is when I don't ever turn it on, but if I'm at the gym and the news will often be on and you see these agendas trying to be pushed by whatever side it's on, and this isn't to get political in any ways, but trying to make it seem like we're all so different. See, at the core of all of us, even how we express things, we might do stuff completely different than somebody else, but we're still trying to meet our needs. We're still trying to work through our emotions, because at the core of who we are, it always comes down to emotion. That's why we can all go on here and talk about this thing about feeling guilty, about being guilty, and 20 of us say, yeah, I'm guilty of that, because we all went through it. That's when I can go on there and say that the reason that we felt guilty for feeling guilty is because we didn't feel guilty because we wanted to feel guilty. We felt guilty because in that moment of feeling guilty for not feeling guilty, we believed that we weren't demonstrating love, that we weren't caring enough, that we didn't love the person that we felt the guilt around enough. Make sense? And how many times can you say guilty? I hope that those little word plays there, you keep up with it. So this is at the core of why this is a marriage that needs to end. Because what happens with this, and it's been happening for most of our lives by the unanimous show of guilt in here, is that we've all learned at some level, and I shouldn't say we all, I'm not saying we all like every human being out there, because this isn't everybody's experience. But for most of us who struggle with guilt, we struggle with it not because we were bad, not because we did something wrong, but we struggle with it because it's what we learned to do to show and express love. And we use guilt, and then so we go through life using guilt as our way to try to show love. The more guilty I feel, the more I love. If I feel guilty for not doing this, I feel guilty for not doing that. The reason I feel so guilty is because I'm such a great person. I really am enough. How can I ever be enough if I don't feel guilty? How can I ever demonstrate my love if I don't feel guilty? Well, no, you don't understand. I should feel guilty because I can remember one time, I believe this for a long time. Yeah, I should feel guilty because I can remember my mom not being happy as a kid, and my job, I believe my self-appointed job was that as a kid, I need to make my mom happy. I need to make my dad happy. And I was failing at that miserably. And because of that, I deserved to feel guilt. It was my punishment. It was my penance I needed to pay. Many of us will take guilt on as a penance we need to pay. Should have done more, wish I could have done more, could have done more. We will, if only they would have loved us. With my friend Gabe when he took his life, there was a tremendous amount of guilt around, I should have been able to done more, I could have done more. Right? That if he would have reached out to me, if I would have loved him enough, if I would have let him know that he was enough, then he would have never made the decision he did. When my dad died unexpectedly, I withheld love so much, and I don't think my dad ever faulted me for that, but I withheld it because that's what I learned to do, is withhold love. And so then I feel all this guilt about all this love that I was aware of that I felt for my dad that I never expressed because I was so committed to being pissed off and angry about him over the story that I learned from my mom, from him, from myself. And so I felt guilty for the story. I felt guilty because when my dad died, I believed that there was something more I should have done. And the more I should have done was be honest, speak from my heart, say I'm sorry, offer forgiveness, all those things. Notice none of it too. None of it's, oh, I should have bought him a new car. I should have done those types of things, right? It all comes down to what I could have done, what I should have done, what I believe I could have. But this is where we need to separate from this relationship thing, this marriage thing, and I'll take questions. So if you have questions or comments about this, I see someone started to pop it in. Start typing them in because I want to really do more Q&A with this. When we have an emotion like guilt that is so closely associated to our two biggest fears, I'm not enough, I'm not lovable, that they almost become this marriage to the point that we feel guilty for not feeling guilty because we feel like if we don't feel guilty, we don't feel love. We feel guilty because we believe that there's something else we shoulda, woulda, coulda done. And that our penance, our burden, our punishment that we must pay for that is to carry around this feeling of guilt because we let down the people that we love the most. Guilt can be one of the heaviest burdens to bear. And it can and will break many people. But it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. We can begin to heal guilt and let it go by acknowledging that when we were little kids, just like we are as big kids now, we didn't know what we didn't know. It wasn't our job to make anyone happy, to make anyone any different than themselves. They were responsible for themselves. We were responsible for us. And everyone, including our parents, ourselves, was doing the best they could with what they have. It's the same as you are now. And if you want to feel love, if the reason the presence for the guilt is really for love, for the sake of love, ask yourself, how can I love more today? How can I be more loving? How can I give more love to others? Give love without the expectation of anything in return. Because if you're loving with expectation, that's not really loving. That's like kind of bartering. Here, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. You can begin to heal guilt with love, because if guilt's really there as a placeholder for love, ask yourself, how can I love more today? What can I do to be more loving? What can I do to be more kind? What can I do to be more caring? How can I always choose love first? Because if you choose love first, you will never be put in that position where you think that there was a better choice that may have been available to you. Because you'll always know that you chose the best choice, and that was a choice of love. Even though things may not quite work out the way you'd want them to. It may never quite fully meet our expectations. We'll at least be living our place from a place of love. So that's what I have for you all today. Is this helpful, first of all? Yes, no? And then what questions do you all have? What questions do you all have? I'm going to circle back around. So go ahead and start typing your questions. If it's helpful, say yes. If this wasn't helpful, tell me that too, but say why, so I can learn and I can improve it. Also, if you want one of the 2 remaining strategy sessions, if you want to dive deeper and work through some of the guilt, if this is resonating with you or other things, this is going to be a perfect opportunity for you. 2 spots left. If you're really serious about coaching and want to dive deeper into this, I really encourage you to take me up on this, and you and I are going to work together for the next couple months and get you from where you are to where you want to be. Also, before I'm answering questions, Facebook Live reminders, you can use this link right here that I'm popping up for that, and then I'm going to circle back through here for questions. I'm guilty of being late. We'll forgive you, Angie, for making a clever entrance. I saw my husband, I'm assuming that's supposed to say saw, Melinda, right? My husband end his life as our 2.5 upstairs. God help me, my guilt is beyond. So, Melinda, this is a perfect example. First of all, my heart goes out to you for that. Being someone who was present when my friend ended his life, I know how traumatic and life-altering an experience like that can be, regardless of the circumstances. And I feel for you with that. And I'll also say to you that I appreciate and honor so much your courage to share that, because that's such an extreme example in the human experience. But you can see even in that, right? The principles of what we're talking about is true. The guilt that you feel, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is, Melinda, is that the guilt you feel is that there's guilt that you should have done more, you could have done more, you should have known, you all these types of things, right? And it's there because you loved your husband, you want to take care of him, you want to protect him, you want to honor him, you want to treasure him, all those types of things that we represent in love. But in his moment of decision, because you didn't see, do, or act how you think you should have, you've learned to associate it that it meant that in that moment, maybe you didn't love as much as you could have. Right? Is that fair to say, Melinda? And please correct me if I'm wrong too. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all, but I want to explore this with you because guilt manifests itself in such different extremes and aspects of our life. And it's really important to look at the core of it, no matter what it is, that it usually comes back to love, to a decision that we should have, could have, would have done more. And even that's usually associated to love. And it always comes back to these two core fears, right? Not love, not enough. When my mom had dementia, I didn't go see her. I felt so much guilt after her death. Yeah, I bet. I feel loved by my family and pets, but I don't have a guy to make me feel loved. So I would look at that statement, Deborah. It's not anyone's job to make you feel loved. It's up to you to make yourself feel loved. See, your pets, your family, they feel loved by you because of how you conduct yourself with them. Right? Your pets, you love them, you pet them, you feed them. Your family, you do whatever you do. You are who you are around them, and that's part of the reason how they communicate and present love to you. It's not anyone's job, guy, girl, or anybody externally, to make you feel loved. If you want to receive love from somebody else, I would encourage you to first shower yourself with love, be open to the love that is coming in, and then identify what kind of love it is you want to receive, and then be clear about the types of people you want to receive that from. Because if we're going into relationships and looking for someone to make us feel loved, we will typically go into what I call band-aid relationships, where we jump in and it's hot, heavy, intense, and there's all these promises and everything else, and everything seems rosy posy and great at the beginning. We slap a band-aid over a wound that we're not healing, and then what happens is time goes on, sex gets stale, everything else, and then we're just left with a person that they haven't dealt with our shit, and we haven't dealt with ours. I didn't take care of my mom like she did, or her mom, my grandma. Yeah, I quite a few people will feel that, especially when it goes into caretaker role, Linda. I know when my grandma, she just passed away from Alzheimer's, and I definitely felt that. I think her daughters felt it to some degree too. You're so right. My dad and I never had a real relationship, and when he died, I honestly felt nothing. No guilt in not seeing him before he died. I suspect because we never had any actual love. He helped give me life, but that was about it. Sometimes I feel guilty for not feeling bad. Yeah, like you should feel something, right, Christine? There's some people in our lives that they're nothing more than sperm donors. And we can find a place to, even as a sperm donor or an egg donor, we might feel that we should love them just because they were gracious enough to, or gracious enough to share their sperm, share their eggs, so we could become into existence. And that we're told that we should feel a certain thing. Well, it's your dad, well, it's your mom, well, it's whoever. You should feel something, and then you don't. Your feelings are your feelings, and honor your own feelings. It's not meant to be what everybody else tells you should feel. Feel what's true to you. Feel what's on your heart. I appreciate you sharing that. That's a good one, because I think it's one that quite a few people do. Very helpful. Thanks, Kathy. Very helpful. Awesome. Very helpful. It has been profound in my healing. I felt so free after yesterday's live session. Oh, it's awesome, Melissa. Thank you. This has been value to me. Very cool on so many levels. Been in too many band-aid relationships. Yeah, band-aid relationships are super, super common that we'll go into, because we're going into it not even clear on what it is we want. We're just going into it to try to figure out how to get our needs met as fast as possible. Because when we don't have we're not getting our needs met, we start to feel scared, we start to feel uneasy, we start to feel uncertain. So we start to look for the fastest way to meet our needs, and a great way to do is a band-aid, because there's always someone out there who's willing to be a band-aid for us. Melinda, are you still on here? I just want to make sure if you were. And if you're not, Melinda, if you want to message me afterwards, and we can talk a little bit more about your husband, I just want to make sure that that answered your question on here. Hey, Stacy. Oh, it's Jesse. That's me. It's Stacy saying me, not hey, Stacy. Snuck in late story. Oh, we got somebody else who is guilty of being late. I feel a lot of guilt leaving my relationship because I feel like I'm tearing my son away from his dad, but also so much quit if I'd stayed in an unhealthy relationship. What is that last? What is that last sentence supposed to be there, Stacy? I'm not quite sure. I feel like I'm tearing my son away. And while Stacy's typing up, this will be. Is there anything else? Any comments, questions about this? Everything makes sense. Everything's clear. I'll wait for Stacy to just put it in and clarify that, and then just real quick tomorrow, same time is going to be not guilty, with guilt underlined, how to acquit yourself from a guilty life sentence. Not guilty, how to acquit yourself from a guilty life sentence. So we're going to get more into the how tomorrow. We're going to start talking about some really specific tools we can use to shift. And we're going to go into that. We've done more of the what and the where. We did some why today. We're going to get into the how tomorrow. Incidentally, I really get a kick out of myself when I come up with some of these titles. So I hope that you take the time to appreciate the titles of these, because I really put some thought into them. Problems with the non-feelings I have towards my father. Thanks for asking the question. That's awesome. Yeah, Christine, did you see that with what Lisa said? Perfectly sums up the non-feelings towards my father. So again, this is why it's so important to ask and contribute, because look at and I know Christine and Lisa are not even in the same country. They have oceans between them, but yet they had the same similar situation experience. So it's so important to be bold enough and brave enough to be vulnerable, to share, to open up, to contribute in here, because this is where we're all really going to be able to learn and support one another. Guilty of leaving my child because all she is me. I'm dealing with a lot, moving school and a few more. Yeah. Heather, I'm not quite sure. I understand guilty of leaving my child. Heather, if you want to message me too, we can explore that a little bit more too, because I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're saying before I answer. So much guilt if I stayed in my relationship, but so much quilt leaving. Oh, so is that supposed to be guilt too? And maybe it just cuts it off, and that's where I'm having problems reading it. It says quilt and not guilt. I'm assuming that's supposed to be guilt. A lot of guilt leaving my relationship because I feel like I'm tearing my son away from his dad, but also so much guilt if I'd stayed in a healthy relationship. So one of the challenges when these dynamics, right, when it's should I go relationship, especially if there's a third party and they're called your children, is what to do, how to separate that. And I will tell you of being a kid who was definitely in a parental dynamic where the parents chose to stay together, not because they wanted to, but because they didn't want the kids to live separately. That was a huge, huge burden to bear. A huge burden to bear. Now, there's some guilt that we can definitely work through and work out around it in that regard and completely transform it. And actually, but it was a hard one growing up, for sure. I would definitely not want anybody to make the same choice my parents did. Love the titles. There we go. How do I change this guilt? So Heather, tomorrow we're going to get into some of the more specific hows with it. We're going to get into some tools about working with guilt. I like the emoji. We three need to talk more about our fathers. Yes, guilt. Typing fast. Okay. My immaturity, my child, and me not having a father figure. Yeah, we're gonna get into some of the how, some specific tools with guilt. And also, again, this is where coaching can come into it with everyone too, is we're only ever going to be able to do so much here in this short bit of time working through this. If you really, really, really want to dive in deep with this and do some really powerful inner work, you got to do coaching. Because I can never go as deep in this context as we can in that dynamic. And this can be a supplemental thing. There's quite a few of my clients I've seen pop up on here right now, and they'll back it up too, is just say, this becomes a really cool supplemental piece to coaching. Great titles. Thank you, Kathy. this becomes a really good supplemental piece, because you just can't do the deep work. And it's the deep. Remember, we talked about the other days, we got to get to the roots, and the roots are deep. So with that being said, if you want to dive deeper, we got to do coaching, and we're going to get to some specific how-to tools tomorrow. How can we talk about our fathers together? Just friend each other? Yeah, I would just friend each other, tag each other, those types of things. Yeah, absolutely. Just if you, and all of you too, you remember the purpose of this too is to create this community where it was so cool to see everybody sharing their goals for the week yesterday, and now you can support each other, that you can check in. Just right now, having all of you talking about having these commonalities, right? You can form little subgroups. You can involve the discussion with it, all those types of things. We can involve these into, maybe there's a group of you that becomes the spearhead, and we do a full workshop live somewhere, a little mini retreat where 20 of us get together, and we spend a whole day diving through guilt, or working on getting unstuck, or any of these topics we talk about. So this is a really cool community thing that we can develop with us. Heather, if you use that link that I posted above here, I'll post it again. And where'd it go? You can use that to, oops, that's the wrong one, sorry. You can use that to set up the strategy session to talk about coaching. Oops, did I do it? Darn it. Sorry. I think that'll go. Oh no, what happened to everybody else? Oh, what did I just do? Oh no, where did everybody go? Okay, there we go. Facebook message, we start a group chat. Cool. All right, I will let you all continue to talk it out. I would love to dive in deep. I love to my story. Yeah, Stacey, this is where you and I have talked about doing coaching before. Maybe now is a good time for you to do it. Yeah, I think it'd be a great time for you to do it. And there's no better time like the present. So yeah, Linda had a great idea about Colorado. You guys should talk to her about it. I think that'd be really cool. Anyways, I have to jump. I have to run for now. I will be back here tomorrow, same time. I hope to see many of you, if not all of you then. Be sure to bring a friend, because we're going to dive into some specific tools. First of all, thank you so much for all of you who have shared this, who have commented on it, who have liked it. Your engagement is amazing. If you found value in the discussion afterwards, please put, like, I found value in the discussion. Type that in there, just let people know, and then go through and like the different contributions people made. I see some of you doing that already, but we just want to reinforce this. We want to make this a really positive, loving, supporting community. Huge thanks to you. Some of you asked some really tough, really hard questions, and really opened up, and were very vulnerable today. It takes so much courage to do that, and I just honor you so much for doing that, because going to that depth, it made it safer and more empowering for other people to start to open up. And those of you who are courageous enough to do it, getting to the heart of those types of things like that, that's really where we can use this as a force of good to make change. So I appreciate each of you doing that. Remember, there's 2 spots for strategy sessions this week. If you want one of the 2, use that link. This is for folks who are really serious about diving in and doing coaching. And if you want to watch the replay, I'll leave this up for the week. It'll be available right afterwards. I hope to see you on here tomorrow. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. You can also message me if you want to dive in deeper to some of these types of things. I'll be happy to address it there. And you're awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, your attention, your energy, your support, your love. I appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, wherever you are, whether it's morning, noon, or night, carpe diem, seize the day, seize the moment. You only have this one shot at living this moment. It's the only moment that you're guaranteed. So make the most of it. See you later, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.